Well, in the shop tonight is this 1992 F150. This is a short bed, two-wheel drive. It's got the 4.9 liter inline, 300 cubic inch, 6-cylinder. And the issue that I'm having with it, among other things, is when it's running off of the rear tank, it's overflowing the front tank. So this is the dual fuel setup. This is a very common problem for these things. I saw in another video that Ford had a recall for these. I called Ford dealership and they said, nope, there's no open recalls on this truck. I got on Ford's website and there's no recalls on this truck. So I don't know how true that is, but so anyhow, it's a common thing. Like I said, they have, each pump has a check valve, and if the check valve goes bad in the pump, then the other pump overflows that tank. So that's exactly what's going on here. So I need at least a front fuel pump. I may need, I don't know if the check valve is good on the back or not, because I can't get it to run off the front tank. I siphoned some fuel out of the front tank a little bit ago, and it's red, which looks like, it smells like old gas, but it looks like off-road diesel. So I don't know why in the world there would be off-road diesel in a gas tank on this thing. That being said, I just bought this. I just got it home. Actually, it's been sitting for a little while out here in the garage, or out in the driveway, waiting for me to get to it. But this is the first I've started messing with it. It runs real rough. But like I say, it runs rough on the rear tank, but then it's overflowing the front tank continuously. So I can't get it to run hardly at all on the front tank. When I flip the switch, it doesn't die immediately, but it runs like crap. So it could be that it's full of diesel fuel, and that might be the only problem there. So I need to get at least a fuel pump in that one. I need to get the bed off the thing to do it. So you could cut an access hatch in the bed here. I saw some videos on that. I'd be nervous that I'd hack this thing all up and then it'd look like crap. And I'm trying to keep it in reasonable condition. I mean, the truck overall is not that bad. It's got the typical rust. Somebody's hidden with fender flares. And, you know, the cab corners are a little bit rusty. It's got some Bondo. But overall, the thing is in pretty good shape. So I'm trying not to hack it up too bad. So I'm going to pull the bed off. I already did loosen the bolts. It's pretty straightforward to get the bed off of here. You got 2 in the front, 2 toward the back, and then 2 at the very back. So there's 6 bolts that hold the bed down. I got up under there, sprayed them with some liquid wrench, and they broke free pretty easily. They weren't the very easiest things to get out, but if a guy had a swivel adapter for his half-inch socket, that'd be the way to do it. They take an 18 millimeter, so that's the only other sort of weird thing going on with them. And they're a carriage bolt. So you loosen the nut from underneath, and that is a smooth, rounded head. So these are actually carriage bolts. If yours are stuck real bad, they can be a bear. I got lucky on these. I've seen, you know, where guys have had to cut the heads off those bolts before, so I got lucky. Spray your bolts down with liquid wrench from up underneath, and hopefully yours will break free too. So then the only other thing I had to do was disconnect. There's 2 wires up under in the rear here. If you just crawl up under here, I'm not going to do it. They jump right out at you. There's 2 plugs. One plug connects your running lights at your bumper, and then the other plug is the main harness plug for your tail lights. So there's 2 electrical plugs. They're right behind the bumper. You crawl up under there, they jump right out at you. No problem. So once we get those unhooked, which I already did, then the only other thing is there are 3 sheet metal screws that hold the filler neck in. 1, 2, 3 on that one, and then 1, 2, 3 sheet metal screws hold the filler neck in on this one. I've already pulled those all out. I think those were a 3/16. I think that was the nut driver I used. So anyhow, the bed is sitting on here loose now. I need to jump up in there and pop the bolts out. I've already got all the nuts off. I'll pop these bolts out. I think I'm going to roll the thing forward or drive it forward and use my tractor, and with the loader on the tractor, I think I'm just going to lift up, put some straps on here, seems fairly solid, and lift this thing off. If you had some help, which I don't, if you had another able-bodied person, you could probably just pick it up and carry it right off. I'd say 2, 3, or 4 people would be great, but it's just me out here in the shop. So I could use my cherry picker. It'd probably be awfully cumbersome with a cherry picker. So I'm just gonna pull it outside, pluck it off there with a tractor, and then I'll show you what we're looking at. Well, they sure do look a whole lot different when you take the bed off of them. I can tell you, when I was backing this thing in here, I was looking over my shoulder out that rear window, and it was nice. You can see the ground back here. You can see that rear wheel. You can see exactly where you're backing into. So it's kind of nice not having a bed on there. You can see what we're working with here now. So the fella that I bought this truck off of, apparently he only had it for like a year or 2 or something like that. Apparently he brought it home, it started having issues, he parked it, and he really didn't do anything with it. He was looking to he was a young guy, had a lot of ambition, he was looking to, maybe restore it, and I think it was more of a project than he wanted to deal with. So he just parked it and it sat. But anyhow, he told me that the person before him had said that they had replaced the rear tank and that they put a new fuel pump in when they replaced the rear tank. And given the look of that thing compared to that one, I'd say that, yeah, that probably did replace the rear tank. And I'm looking at that locking ring. That locking ring looks new. I'm gonna guess that the pump is good in there. Again, it's been running off the rear tank. So the check valve is bad on the front fuel pump. Because we can't run the thing, it just won't run worth a hoot on the front tank. We can't verify that the check valve is good on the back tank. So for now, we're gonna have to take baby steps here. I'm hoping that one check valve is good, so I won't have to replace that pump. So the first thing I need to do is get into this one, drain everything out of that tank, put some fresh fuel in it, run it, and see if it is back feeding into that tank. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to disconnect the battery because we're working with some electrical connectors back here. So I don't want any sparks. I don't want to take the risk of any sparks. You can see also that this thing has been leaking. It's like plumb full. It's over full, and it's leaking out around that gasket, around that fuel pump. So I'm going to disconnect the battery, and then I'll knock that locking ring loose, and we'll see what's going on in that tank. Well, I got the pump out of it, and sort of unremarkable. The float's still hanging on there. Of course, it's a plastic float. The sock kind of ripped off as I was pulling it out of the tank, but that's no big deal. I watched a video, and a guy said that you can blow on the return side, and if you can blow, and if it blows through, then you can that's one verification that the check valve is bad. I put my mouth on there and I blew, and I can't tell if it's leaking or not. I went ahead and blew on the feed side, and it's definitely not leaking. This side might be leaking, but there's something like, I don't know, there's like 35 or 40 pounds of fuel pressure when that's, when the thing is running. So I know I'm not able to put 40 pounds of pressure on it. So I know the tank is overflowing. I know when the truck is running on the rear tank, it's overflowing the front tank. So it's got to be bad. Unremarkable looking. So, I went ahead and pulled a sample of that fuel out, just to show you guys how red this stuff is. Now, that's not like dingy yellow brown like varnish. That's red. Now, I grew up on a farm, and the only thing I remember ever being dyed red was off-road diesel. I mean, there was guys around that would have gasoline delivered in their overhead tanks, you know, out by the barn to fill up gas tractors and stuff. And I don't remember any of that gas ever being dyed red. But you can tell, I mean, that tank is just plumb full of something red. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick that garden hose in there, siphon it out. We'll look at the condition of that tank and go from there. Well, our fuel pump came in today. Had to order it off of Amazon. Well, didn't have to, but they wanted like $250 at my local parts stores. Amazon wanted like, I forget, 70 something. So it's all bubble wrapped up in there. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing unpackaged with two hands. I'm going to compare it to the old one and we'll get it installed. So I'm doing an inspection of the thing. I held them up to each other while it was still in the bag, you know, and compared the two. They look pretty well the same. The only major difference I can see is the float on this one is plastic and it faces that way, and this one faces this way. Yeah, and I guess that's a plastic float anyhow. Or is that brass? Yeah, it's plastic. Different shape to the float. The wiring is different, and they give you a diagram here, but it's got the wrong wire colors on it. So you can easily tell, you know, black, red, yellow on these posts, and then you just follow that over here. Black, red, blue. You follow that around, and I'm going to end up cutting my harness and splicing in. They give you a new pigtail for their harness, so no big deal there. The one thing that I don't like about it, and this might bite me, but when I blow, I put my mouth on the return side, and if you remember, on my old pump, that's the reason we're changing it out. The pump itself works fine, but the check valves don't work right. And the return side is leaking on this one. I think the pressure side, or well, they're both pressure. The feed side, I think, is okay. This one, when I blow on the return line, I feel like I'm getting full resistance, like I don't think it's bleeding at all. But when I blow on this side, I'm definitely feeling that, you know, I'm losing pressure here. So I don't know if this is going to bite me in the butt. I'm hoping that, you know, get it in the truck, get some fuel running through it, and whatever manufacturing with that check valve will seal itself up. I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and stick it in it, you know, see what happens. I did notice, and I noticed this when I was pulling this thing apart. This has got an extension. It's got like a, oh, I don't know, what is that, 3-inch extension? This one, of course, doesn't have it. I don't know if I'm going to have to take that off of this one or if I can make this one work on there without that extension. So really, that's about the only difference so far. So I'm going to get it over there. I'm going to take this with me over to the truck, eyeball that plug to make sure I'm getting the wires correct, lay this next to it, and cut my harness and wire this in. I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done. Well, made my connections up. I did not shrink my tubing yet because I'm working right over top of an open gas can, so I don't want to be striking no lighter right here. It's pretty straightforward. I just laid the old fuel pump up here and look at what wire came out of, you know, off the harness and plugged to the corresponding plug on the new fuel pump to decide which color goes to what. It's pretty straightforward when you lay it up here and start looking at it and following the wires. I cleaned up around there the other night, just wiped it up a little bit again. I think that's in pretty good shape. I mean, it's got just a little bit of surface rust around it, but it actually doesn't look bad. That red, you can see it down in there, kind of splotchy. I wonder if that's not like a tank sealant that somebody dumped in there, and it's just dissolving into the gas now and making the gas look red. I don't know. That's the only thing I can figure out. Put some clean motor oil on my fingers and just rubbing it around on this new gasket. Figure it can't hurt to sort of lube that up a little bit. think that's pretty much it. I'm going to put some dielectric grease up inside that connector too. Okay, well, there's our finish install, zip tied to that cross member there. It should be out of the way of, anything real important. Way up out of the drive shaft, and should be far enough away from the muffler there. I guess let's go ahead and dump some gas down the throat of this thing and see what happens. That's a good thing. Well, I'm almost ashamed to admit it, but I'm going to, because I don't want you guys to make the same mistake I did. Some of you guys probably been watching this video, hear me talk about this extension and think, that guy's an idiot if he doesn't realize it's a check valve. I was editing this video and it occurred to me that I wonder if that's a check valve, because the other one's got one on the feed side too. And the feed side of the new pump is the one that allows me to blow back. And I thought, well, if there's an internal check valve, then maybe it'll, seal itself up after it gets some use. It didn't even occur to me. This is a check valve. I can blow on it one way, but I can't blow it the other way. So if I put this in the feed side of this pump, we know the check valve on the return side, I was blowing on it, and it feels good. This side did not, but once I add that in, we should have two good check valves. And that makes perfect sense then why there's one in there. I guess it's a factory thing. Maybe it's an add-on, but I'm going to go ahead and break that connection, add this thing back in line just like it was on the other one. We should be in good shape. Well, I got the check valve put in line on the feed side and didn't really have any issues there. Let's go ahead and start this thing up. Got my flashlight because this camera does such a poor job picking up light. You can see that we got the switch to the front tank. So let's go ahead and start it up. Look for leaks. So far, so good. Sounds pretty good. Well, this is by far the best that truck has run since I brought it home, so I am very happy with that. Well, I dropped the bed bolts back in, crawled up under there, tightened them down. They all tightened down real well. I was able to reattach the filler necks, no trouble at all. Then, while I was under there tightening the bed bolts, I made my connections for my taillights again. I tested my lights. Everything's working fine. The body lines look pretty good, so the bed went back on no trouble. I then fired it up and actually took it down the road, and the thing drove pretty good. So this is a resounding success. I'm going to leave it parked in here on the concrete where I can keep an eye on underneath, make sure nothing's leaking. But that was it, guys. I hope I helped you with this one. Maybe I gave you some ideas of what to do or what to keep an eye out for or what not to do. If you like this video, click that thumbs up button. You want to see more videos of me working on this truck or all kinds of stuff out here in the shop, click the subscribe button. Until the next time, keep on tinkering.